Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another live stream of VS Code. Really excited to have you guys join because I have like an awesome guest. We could have a great demonstration for you. So I want to go ahead and just say a very general good morning, everyone. And I'm going to just jump right in so we could talk to our guest.
Hello, hello.
Cody De Arkland, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's morning time. We're waking up, but it's good to jump into some things. It's good to jump into software development early in the morning, right?
Yes, for sure. And where are you at also? Like it's morning for me. I'm on Pacific Coast.
Same, Sacramento, California.
Okay, awesome. So what are we going to be chatting about, Cody?
We're going to dive into a bunch of things. We're going to explore a little bit of Sentry. So I'm with the Sentry team. I look after developer experience over here. So we're going to jump in and we're going to play around with our MCP server. We're going to talk a little bit about our VS Code extension on Code Codecov. But we're going to jump in and we're going to jump some broken software and see how you use something like MCP to go and start exploring it. We've done some pretty cool stuff with the way our MCP server works. And I think if you're not doing like one live stream a week on MCP, you're just doing it wrong these days. So time for us to jump in and do that.
Perfect. Now, for those of us that might not have heard of Sentry, can you give us a little background on Sentry and how you end up like working for them, and just maybe a little background about yourself?
Yeah. So I've been in software like most people for a little over 10 years. Sentry is a product that got a lot of attention around being like an error monitoring platform, right? So catching errors when things break and being able to make it really easy to debug. And from there, we kind of spread out and started focusing a lot more on just like the different ways that software has problems. So, like not everything is an error, right? Sometimes there's slowdowns, sometimes there's issues inside, sometimes there's users do weird things inside your applications and you're trying to figure out how to fix it. And so Sentry is really all about making it easier to go and fix those things and find what's broken and fix it faster. I think like what we try to focus on the most is like, how do we make it easier for the people who are actually pushing code, right? So instead of being something that like is sitting in front of the ops team largely, or they're watching big dashboards at the top of the NOC, they could actually be like the people who are pushing code are getting in there and being able to figure out where in their code it's broken and how can they fix it faster. And so big on like the developer workflow, big on how people actually find these things and solve them and get code working again. So.
Nice. And then how did you end up landing the work on the Sentry team? Like, how did that happen? Where you're I really love debugging. I like coding, but debugging is what I really love. Let me go first.
I think it's always like really cool to like find the way that people end up at places. I didn't start off like tech as a software developer. I did a lot of like infrastructure. I built data centers and things like that. And I found my way into this about probably 8 to 10 years ago and just never looked back. I've used Sentry for ages as like a user, and so I've always like really enjoyed the platform overall. Like I think they have a fun like brand personality. Big thing is like not taking ourselves too seriously, which I kind of live for. So, but I've always found that like it was very easy to get the information that I wanted out of Sentry. Like it was really quick to be able to go in and if something broke, be able to have a lot of information around it. And so like it was always something that was just like a very easy workflow tool to use, and there wasn't a lot of like complication in getting it going. It was just there, and I always admired that again. And I thought like the tone of the company was great. I think David Kramer, the founder, is great, really smart guy, really funny guy. And again, like the company doesn't take itself too seriously, and so it's like if you look at the marketing things we do, a lot of it is fun. Like we promoted a basketball game for once at like a Laracon as a way to like give back to the community, have fun with the communities. Like our approach to marketing is like very different. It's very much about just like setting up people to use it. And so as I used it more and as I was a developer and as I built a lot, it's like I think you always find that you want to end up working on the tools that you use the most.
Yeah.
I loved using Sentry. I thought it was a great product, and when the opportunity popped up to go in and lead the DX team, it was kind of no brainer.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always cool when you see that they have like a culture that you're like, yeah, I could see myself like hanging around these guys and then like doing fun work that I'm already familiar with because I already use it on my own. So it sounds, so in short, Sentry makes the experience of debugging much more efficient, right?
Yeah, that's really like a lot of words you can say around it, but really it's just all about making like when something breaks, you should be able to figure out how to fix it really fast. Breaking is not always a big error message on a screen. We do that pretty good, but there's a whole bunch of things that breaking looks like. We try to make it easier to solve for those.
All right. Well, I'm excited to take a look. So yeah, let's jump in and see how some of the demos that you have.
Yeah, let's do it. So I am inside of Sentry right now. We're on light modes because we're trying to wake up today. We have a nice dark mode, of course, but everyone loves light mode on a live stream. So this is my Sentry environment overall. I think it's probably good to give just like a primer on what this looks like before we jump in and start actually playing with the MCP server itself. So right now we're in our issues feed, and this is where like all of the things that are breaking inside of your environment shows up. I have a bunch of different things happening, both like projects that are like live in air quotes production, and then like ones I'm testing things out on. So like we ran a workshop yesterday, and these errors came up during that. But I've got one like this.
Can you control plus real quick? Control plus just to make it a little bigger.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Beautiful, thanks.
There we go. So these are all different issues that have come up inside of my environment. I've got a bunch of different projects set up. All these are little ways of like separating out an environment and making sure that you're only seeing like specific things at any given time. So like if you look down through my list, I've got things that are happening inside like Spaceflight. That's a little game that I made that I host out in the world. I got a couple from our workshop we ran yesterday. And when we jump into this, we've got this little icon here. If we go in, we start seeing a ton of information around what was going wrong when this issue happened. And that little icon translates to the session replay. So I can watch exactly what the user was doing. Now we're big on security, big on protecting users' information. So you can see all these like stars here. That's not an error. It's not a problem inside of it. We're hiding like the user data out. We could unmask that if I wanted to, but this is how we make sure that we're not like accidentally leaking information for people. And so by default, it's turned off. But I can go and I can watch exactly where in that flow an error happened or a problem showed up. And it just makes it really easy to start debugging what went wrong. We focus a lot on like tracing also. So like being able to see not just what was the error message, right? So if we scroll up to the top, we can see the error message here. Not just seeing that, but also being able to go down and see, okay, as someone went through the application and had all these different interactions, where did this problem actually pop up? What was happening at the time? And how long do those things take, as well as like properties associated with it. So there's a lot of information that we kind of collect together just to put in front of a user to make sure it's really easy to find how to fix things.
So it's essentially like recording like the whole development process at any point when something goes wrong. You could go and almost like play it back to see where something broke.
Yeah, so in the case of like replays like these, you can it's basically capturing like the user interactions with the application. So we capture DOM events effectively. It's like different areas of the page they're interacting with. We record those and then stitch them together into basically like a video-like experience. And so you can go in and see, instead of having to go and like if somebody called you and said, hey, website's busted, I'm trying to go and log in, it's not working. Instead of you trying to say, okay, what browser are you on? Let me see if I can get on that browser and try it. You can go in and watch exactly what they saw and see exactly how they experienced it. So it's good for like being able to like understand like repros, understand how a user experienced that problem was happening. So replays are great for that. We recently started rolling out logs. So being able to capture logs from inside of an application, what was happening at a given time, send those up into the environment and be able to debug off of those. So logs are in open beta now. They're going to ship real soon. So excited for that one. We also rolled out agent monitoring recently, which we're pretty excited about. Agent monitoring is being able to gather like how your application's interacting with LLMs and be able to pull that in for debugging. So seeing things like token usage, how long individual calls took, being able to sort things out by different model providers, right? So like if I was using a GPT-4o mini, what did my token usage look like? What were my LLM calls looking like versus if I did it on a Grok 4, how did it change? That same tracing concept I talked about before, being able to translate that into like tool calls inside of LLM. So again, we're really trying to make sure that like wherever the developers are landing in the things they're building, they have good answers for debugging it and solving it inside of the platform.
Nice. When you use it, like, what are like and maybe you've already mentioned it, but like what for some tools, there are some core features that we constantly like use like the most. What are like maybe like the top 3? Like if someone, was like intimidated by this when they see the UI, and I don't know where to start, like what's like, look, if you at least do this or this when this happens, like what would you say are the top 3?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I think by default, I say that like everyone should start off getting error monitoring set up because that's going to grab when things break, and that's going to be like the most noticeable thing for your users, right? When you go to the store and you click on the checkout button and the whole thing crashes, you tend to want to know about that. And so errors is out of the box default. It's also the smoothest setup to get done in the sense of like you install the SDK, you bring it into your app, and largely you're good to go. So I would say starting off with errors is good. I think starting off with logs and replays, those are the other one that are just really easy to get started with and have like a low barrier to complexity. Replays you just turn on, you get a good visual indicator, right? It's like when you come in and you're starting to look inside of the app and you go down and you take a look at that little like triangle there, you can see, oh, there's a replay there. You go in, you can actually see what the user was doing. So it's like very good like feedback loop stuff. So I think like those are really easy to turn on, really easy to consume. Logs, same thing. I think like I was talking with a friend of mine and we were talking about the idea of like why logs are cool, which is funny to say because it's logs, but it's very feasible. You have an application that things just aren't broken, right? You stood up Sentry, you're in a good state, and you're not getting errors, but you're definitely going to have logs coming through that you're going to want to be able to search through if you want to be able to understand, hey, how are people signing into my application? What, like if I have social logins, which ones are they using the most? What do my configurations look like? Where inside of the application are they interacting the most? You can use things like logs to track that. And what's really cool about our approach to logs is we made these trace connected. And like that's a fancy word, but what it means is instead of just being like text on the screen, we've actually mapped it to where in the application that event was actually happening. And so like when you dive into one of these logs, the log you're diving into is actually going to show you all the interactions that were happening at that point. And so like in the one I just clicked in, for example, it's largely a front end interaction. I can see all the things that were happening at that time, performance scores, like this one was not doing very well when it ran, with very unhappy numbers. But again, really trying to make sure you're getting a good sense of the information of what was happening at the time.
Nice.
So shorter version of that, errors, logs, replays. I think like you come out of week 1 with those set up, maybe even uptime monitoring monitors, make sure your website's up and running. Like those 3-4 things are cover probably like 80-90% of like major use cases. And then you start exploring things like tracing, where you're able to dive into like performance and understand, okay, how do I tune my database calls to make sure they're effective, things like that, which is totally important. But I think the other ones have just a real low barrier to entry.
Nice. Now, what if someone's doing like some reports on their code and they wanted to like export some of all this like content that they see on the screen? Do you have like ways to do that, or like we just need to screenshot old school?
Yeah, most of the time I would say because just the nature of Sentry is like a pretty open platform, and like so we would want people to be able to hop in and be able to look at it. We don't necessarily focus so much on like exporting the log values out into a PDF, right? Like we're not so much. we'd want people to pop into the platform. Screenshots are a way. We do a lot of deep links in the platform, so it's easy to share out and let people have access to, or views we can create. We do some level of dashboarding. I showed that in like the AI agent monitoring. We do have dashboards to let people go in and explore and see information like that.
Okay.
But our idea, like the way we look at it, is we want people to have all this data available, but we really want Sentry to be the thing they reach for when something's broken, to go in and like fix an issue. And so it's a lot less likely that someone's going to say, "Oh, let me dump all the things that are wrong inside of my environment and hand them out to the team." It's much more likely that we want people to jump in and be able to dive into actually fixing the problem. And so we've optimized around, this is broke, let's set it up to get you fixing it.
Got it. Salson.10 says, this should have been around in 2013.
Yeah, right.
This is a big headache, he says, when clients said that the site is down, but the basic monitoring showed just green.
Yeah. I think like it's one of those things that like we saw such like huge adoption of Sentry, and so many like if you go in, you talk to a group of developers and you say, "Hey, anyone here use Sentry?" 50% of them, 75% of them are going to raise their hand and say, I use it. And almost all of them are going to say, "Yeah, I've heard of Sentry before." And I think it's because like that idea of a thing broke and I need to know that it broke and how it broke is such just a common thing. And we've made it just really easy to get up and running with, right? You can have Sentry running in your app in definitely less than 5 minutes. Like, anytime.
Nice. So let's talk about a scenario where I've heard happen several times throughout my career, when there's an issue where it's related to memory leak. That's one of the ones that's just like a pain that people really hate. Where would one go to help try to figure out how to address memory leak, or to even find out memory leak?
Totally. So like, obviously, in a perfect world, that memory leak has started throwing issues, throwing errors inside of the application. So you're starting to see it show up in the feed on here. That would be like the best case, because we get a ton of telemetry just off of the fact that it's showing up here on the dashboard, and all of this stuff can be pulled out. That said, memory leaks are always kind of tricky because they tend to build up over time, and they're not always throwing errors right out of the gate. You're just watching it kind of expand in the background, and things are getting really bad without you seeing it. And then when you do see it, it's usually, again, really, really bad. And so I think we do a lot of stuff inside of this insight section for front end and back end. And inside of here, you can start to dive into something called profiling. So we're able to go in and we're going to see how like individual function performance, and I don't have it set up inside of the demos that I'm running here right now, but profiling is how I usually look at a memory leak problem. I'd watch that and see like over time how the duration of these function calls start to expand. What is their memory usage start to look like? How is the performance changing of them? And it becomes pretty clear pretty fast like when something is going wrong, when something goes wrong from a profile standpoint. Again, sadly, I don't have any actually set up in here, which is a bummer, because it would be nice to be able to show. But you can see a nice little heat map of those individual function calls and how they're performing. It makes it really easy. And like, what's great is we set up a lot of good alerting around these. And so like, from any of those events, you can dive in and actually configure out alerts to say, "Hey, when this starts to expand again, let me know." We just rolled out anomaly alerting. And so instead of saying, in traditional monitoring, you look for like a value, right? If my latency goes from 100 milliseconds to 150 or whatever, send an alert. But we actually started tracking anomalies now. So you can go in and say, "Hey, if I see, if this just starts to look weird, right, notify me." And so we can look for changes in performance up or down compared to like an existing baseline. And so like for a memory leak scenario, like things like that are just great.
Nice. We had another comment from Lawson. He says, I liked it took a picture of the error screen when my site went down. I could see a particular plugin wasn't compatible with the PHP version upgrade.
Yeah, it's super common. Super common. Good use case. And a lot of times, like these are all pretty weird looking errors in general. But like if I go into like the little demo app I have, this one that we ran the workshop on yesterday, and it's had a little bit of sign-in problem. obviously this is a little bit of like a staged demo. We use this for a workshop to go and teach people how to install and configure and get it up and running. But like totally common to have problems with login in some way. In a few moments, those are going to pop up inside of this list. There it goes, right? So we can see right away, it popped up to the top of the list, how long ago it happened. I can see how many events came through. We dive in, we can see information here about like the actual error. You see exactly where it was happening. So this is happening as part of a post call to the SSO endpoint. We can see exactly where in the code this was happening. So source maps are showing us like which line of the code actually had this problem happening at. So it makes it really easy to dive into the actual code and see what's going on. I can see the breadcrumbs. So as a user steps through, like when did this actually happen in their different sequence of events.
Okay.
We see the actual logs that attach to it. And I think this is like, the reason I'm stepping through it in this way is like we bring all of these independent signals that are things you can totally do in other platforms, but you have to jump around in a bunch of different places to try and correlate them together. Like think about last time you were on an outage, you probably had 3 or 4 different tools up where you were trying to look and see like, does something look weird here? I see the error over here, but what does performance look like on this side? You shouldn't have to jump through that many systems to actually find this stuff. And so we've really focused on bringing it all together into kind of one central place.
Nice.
Just to make it really easy to debug off of.
Yeah, that's always cool when everything's like all in one location. What about people who don't? What about best practices in terms of debugging? You know, I mean, that's something like early on in our career, they learn where we're taught like how to like write exceptions, how they bubble up, and all that. Like, if someone is just like not good at writing exceptions at all, is Sentry still as effective getting all the information? And it doesn't make a difference, or if they are really good at it, does it help Sentry, or it's or it makes no difference?
No, it definitely makes a difference, but I think what we've really tried to build is a platform that doesn't require it, right? We want you to be able to install the SDK and just go and get errors captured on it. The better you are at writing those, the more context you're sending up into Sentry, and so like the more information you're going to get out. And so the better, like the more careful you are, then the more you write, you're going to get more information back. Debugging is going to get easier. But we really optimize around like the idea like it shouldn't have to be that hard. We should be able to do a lot of this for people. We should be able to solve for the 80% use cases really well. And so like I think in general, anyone should be able to like fire this up and get a lot of use out of it. We really optimize around that developer experience.
Cool. So everyone in the chat, feel free to drop in any questions that you have. If you've used Sentry before, with your experience with it. I'm looking at the chat and just waiting for like some other questions. But in the meanwhile, Cody, what else?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you something really cool, and then we're gonna get into the MCP stuff. So we talked a lot about like how you or me as a developer pop in here and start exploring around and trying to find what things that are broken. We rolled out something called Seir recently. It's our AI debugging agent. And so all that stuff that I just talked about, like that you can dig into like profiles and logs, it's great and it's nice to see. And we really focus on making it easy for you to consume, but it still requires you to go in and like visually look at all of those and say, okay, cool. Like these are all happening in the same issue. How are these connected? What Seir does is Seir takes these issues that are coming in and looks at all of these different things to bring them together to actually look for like the root cause and solve it. And so you think about it, the way I describe this to other people is if you took your error message, right? This error message is happening inside of my app right now. I could probably grab this and I could go into something like vscode and I could drop it into the LLM and say, my app's broke. And I could fire this off, and I don't know, maybe I get something back, maybe I don't, right? Maybe I get something helpful, maybe not. It's going to start searching, and VS Code's going to go do its agency thing and try to find where inside of my code it's broken overall.
Mm-hmm.
But we all know at this point that like the more things you give to the LLM about what's happening inside of the application, the better it's going to be at finding a real problem. And so when you think about all the stuff I've been talking about that Sentry grabs really well, like where in the code it's broken, what was happening inside of the trace. So what systems was it trying to communicate when it broke? What were the log entries around it? This is all like really, really good context for an LLM to chew on to actually solve a problem. And that's what Seir does. The Seir grabs all of that, brings it together, and starts looking at, okay, what's really, really wrong inside of this operation. And I had the automation for it turned off. Normally I have it on, and so like anytime an issue comes in, it starts chewing on it right away to go and try to find an issue. But I wanted to be able to show you going in and firing it off. But Seir collects all of that and lets you go in and debug off of it and see, like, you're not debug off of it, but we'll actually go all the way down and it'll debug it for you and then pull a PR to actually fix it if it finds what's wrong.
So right now it was using AI in the back end, like leveraging.
Yep, it is chewing on it right now. And you see all of it going through right here as it starts to think.
Okay, and it was using MCP.
So this one's not using MCP right now, but I think that's where MCP gets really interesting, because now, like, with MCP, you have this really good way to bring context into your LLMs. And I'm not sure, obviously I made the joke earlier about if we're not doing one live stream a week on MCP, we're probably doing it wrong at this point, but there's still a ton of confusion about what MCP actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And how I tend to explain MCP the most is it's a tool that lets you bring better information and more relevant information into your LLMs. And sometimes that information is actions you want to take, right? Like maybe it's changing a file config or updating something. Sometimes it's just pulling in better information for the LLM to decide what to do with. And all those individual things we talked about before, I can call with MCP. And so if I said, I'm having a problem in my app, MCP, can you look at the logs for this project? It can go into Sentry and pull down the logs and say, okay, for this issue that popped up, I'm seeing these logs. But where it gets really cool is you can have MCP go and run this debugging agent, find what's actually broken, pull in the fix, and then use your local LLM to go and apply it, right? So instead of having Seir go and like pull the PR and go and like merge it directly, which is definitely something like a lot of people are excited for. You can see, oh, looks like it found some things to dig into, and it even asked me a question about it to give it a little bit more information because it had a question. So no middleware in use. Instead of having somebody come in and like pull this PR off, like, you can actually have it just apply that fix directly. And so MCP can go and pull the fix and then just use it to fix the problem.
Cool. But like what we just saw right here, all that work that was being done, was that in the background using an LLM?
Totally, yeah. Not MCP. We do a lot of stuff in the background ourselves, but yeah, this is all the stuff that's happening right here. This is actually a streaming response back from an LLM that we're using in the background to pull all this information together.
Cool. Is it all right to ask which LLM? I don't know if that's just like, that's a secret or what.
It's not really a secret. We bounce around between a bunch of different providers for different things, and so it's a hard one to answer. It's like there's aspects of GPT in there, there's aspects of Claude in there, there's Gemini in here, and really because like what we're trying to do is use the best tools for different parts of this. Like part of the RAG system, we use Gemini to go and pull things in, and we change those configurations pretty often because the space is just moving so fast, right? And then there's different like customer needs where people say I have to have it configured a certain way, and so we try to oblige that when possible. But for the most part, it's kind of a hodgepodge of different ones, but they're all pretty intentional, and there's like reasons for using them in different ways because certain models are better at different tasks. Certain models are really good. You look at it, Gemini has such a high context window. There's a lot of reason to use that. Some of them are better for fast responses, like we do a scoring within the automation for this, right, to make sure it can automatically run. We do a quick score that's a lighter weight model that's able to move much quicker. And so there's no big necessarily secret on which model it is. It's a little bit of all of them at times.
Got it. Cool. All right.
So found the root cause, right? So BTOA encoding scaling, causing the signature to be undefined. We can go in and we can see all the different points that it found along the way that led to that. And then it's actually going in and starting to figure out a real solution to go and fix the problem.
Nice.
So problem with the log and SSO function. I can tell you that's actually true because I built the workshop, so I know that that's the actual problem. But it'll go all the way down and actually pull a PR, or not PR, but it'll pull a solution out for this, and then you can choose to pull a PR.
Now, if you logged out, come back the next day, and pull this up, pull up Sentry again, are you able to like look back at like this history, or
which history in this case?
Like what we're looking at right now, like the results.
You can go in and you can look at these individual calls. You're not going to see the streaming response that we're seeing down here, just because that's the LLM thought. We don't necessarily save all that. In some areas, you can dive in and see kind of where it was going with it. But at the end of it, it's going to summarize these up into overall like points. And so like the live stream is not kept, but you can see like the summary points if you were never to like, if you didn't go and merge this change.
Cool.
Now, you can see that this is what it actually wanted to actually fix in it.
Oh, okay, cool. Is there a way, like if someone's like completely new to debugging, right? Like they just like learned how to code and they're just learning about debugging. Do you feel that this can be useful for like newbies also? Or is this mainly more for like senior developers?
You know, it's a funny answer, because I think that like, you know, we all need to get a paycheck, right? We all do a job, and we have to like try to represent the things that we work on as best as possible. And so like, I think a lot of people listening to this are probably like, of course Cody's going to say yes here. Of course it's for new people and experienced ones. But I actually just really believe that to be true. I think that like you look at, we're in this like era of vibe coding, which like I'm a huge fan of. I love the idea that anybody can jump in and build and be a part of like software development now. I think back on, I didn't start in this way. I didn't come into software development in high school. I wasn't the guy building websites for my friends. It took me a lot longer to get to that. Like it was when I had my first daughter that I really dove in. And I've been at it now for, you know, like I said before, a little over 10 years. But I remember it was really hard for me to get started. And I think like, it's really cool that people are able to jump into this now and have a very low barrier to entry. But to your point, like learning to debug is a thing, and that's a really hard thing. And like a lot of the stuff we're showing here inside of Sentry, sure, you can do it manually. You can have like exception statements, and you can dump those out somewhere, and you can like write logs out to a text file that you parse out, or you know, you can grab network timing off of interactions in an app. But it's all like very manual. And like the act of putting that all together is like senior engineer level work to try and figure out. It's like it sounds a certain way. It sounds like I'm the guy shilling a vendor product, but like if people are out building in like using LLMs to build their first applications, I think every one of them should go and install Sentry in it, because it's going to give you a ton of information around like when things are breaking. You know, I think of one of my favorite stories of like LLM building is there's a teacher out in like Ohio who got into it early, and at the end of every week, they load their lesson plans into an LLM, and the students can ask questions to it. And like, I think that's like such a cool concept. And the teacher had never built software before, but was able to go in and jump into it. And I think like, what if they could go and see when a student asked a question and it threw an error because like they didn't load the data right, and they're not a developer, so they wouldn't know the necessarily the right way. They had LLM help them set it up, but now they're getting information when something breaks, and they can go and watch how the student was using it when it happened, and they can say, oh, I didn't expect them to click that button to do that thing. That's good to know. And so like, but then like the flip side of it, so I was like, yes, absolutely. New people, I really believe in my heart that everybody building software should install Sentry. It's got a great free tier. The most popular tier we have is like $29. Like everyone should jump in and use Sentry. But then as like a senior engineer, correlating all this stuff together when software is broken, when you're in an outage, is not fun. When you're on a bridge with 20 people and everyone's asking you, hey, like how is this broken? And you're like, oh, I have to log into 7th artisanally handcrafted system to try and pull this information out. That's not a great experience. And then like, you know, we haven't talked about it at all, but like there's this whole concept of code coverage. And so we have this Code Codecov product that looks at test coverage inside of your applications and understands like, hey, are you testing very well throughout? And like, how is your coverage? Like, these are things that normally people have to go and write manually, and we can auto generate that with AI now. And like, as a senior engineer, I think it's super useful because now I don't have to go and build all this stuff manually and try to figure all this stuff out manually. I collect it all into one place, and it's really easy to get to. And so I think it's one of those tools that has very, very good benefits regardless of like the stage of development you're at.
Nice. All right, cool. So it helps with like code coverage, like if you need to put that material together.
Yeah, totally. It's like I think I always think of this as like the stages of software development, right? Because like I think there's a pre-production story, and to me that's like logs and to some extent traces, and some extent some of these like earlier tools. There's the production storage, like errors, because like obviously if I'm developing locally and I get an error, I'm just going to see that in my console. I'm not going to be popping into Sentry to go see my local development errors, most likely, right? Like I'm going to be jumping in and using just I'm going to see it in the console log, and I'm going to go and fix it. But things like logs, sometimes that stuff flashes through terminal too fast to go and scroll through. Being able to capture that is great. And so like I think there's like the pre-production story that's like things like that. There's the prod story that has some of that, and then additionally like the tracing and monitoring. And then there's the overall like life cycle of your code story that is things like the test coverage concept.
Cool. What about load testing? Like if there's an issue because there's just so much load on the servers, is that something that it's aware of, that it could give you a hint, or is that completely unrelated and it's like, no, that's just for the server?
I mean, you can definitely see load on the server. We don't necessarily run load tests ourselves, like the Sentry doesn't do that, but like being able to go in and see like, hey, how often is the thing happening, or how much traffic am I seeing? Absolutely. We can come into like the Trace Explorer here and start to dive into the different traces. And so for those who don't know, when you think of like, you hear these words traces and spans, traces are an overall interaction in your application, and a span is the smaller segments of that interaction. So like a trace might be buying a shirt on gap.com, but the spans are things like clicked the button, loaded the checkout screen, hit the checkout screen sent my order up. Those are the individual spans that are part of that overall trace. And so you can come in, you can say like, wow, I'm seeing a ton of people hit the front end of my application. This is kind of crazy. Yeah.
Cool. What else?
Should we jump into the MCP thing that we've promised everyone to see? We went on a good tangent there. It was a ton of fun. So we should probably dive into MCP now.
All right.
Cool. So here I am inside of my editor. We had our chat window up from before. This is that same project that I was in, and we've taken, again, you heard me talk a lot about like we focus on developer experience. We want people to have a good experience inside of the products. If you look at like the typical MCP server experience today, it's not that. Like the typical one is you go pull an API token, you clone a repo down locally, you make sure it's running in the background as you go and turn it on. And so what we focused on with MCP is we want everyone to be able to just jump in and start using it. So right out of the gate, we built it as a remotely hosted one. So we host it. You don't have to run it locally. We set it up with OAuth so that you authenticate with your Sentry credentials. You don't have to pull an API token. We handle all of that for you. And so if I go, I'm inside of vscode right now. I'll go in and do the Command-Shift-P. I can go in and add a new server. We're going to do this HTTP or server send event one. This is the kind of most modern version of what MCP servers are. And I'm going to go and point at our MCP server. So I'll go https mcp.sentry.dev/MCP, and I'll hit enter, give it a name, we'll call it Sentry. I'm going to make this global for all workspaces. And that is it. So it's going to prompt me to authenticate now. I'll go ahead and open this up. And we see it's running, and we already have 18 tools that are available for us to dive into. And so like right away, in just a few moments, we had we had everything running up inside of MCP for the Sentry MCP. If you want to see more information about our MCP server overall, you can come into our docs. We have a bunch of information in here around how it's actually set up and running. But the mcp.sentry.dev site is kind of the best because you can also go in and play with it here. David Kramer, the co-founder of Sentry, he wrote basically he built a web client for MCP into the website. So you can come in here instead of like, if you don't want to use it in an editor, you can come in, connect in, and actually start calling things from within the website here. So if you want to play with it and you want the sandbox experience, it's easy to come in here and start exploring.
Cool, like a playground.
Yeah, totally. So I'm signed in over here on my account. I had that error come through on login, so I could come into the little chat down here.
Mm-hmm.
We have all our tools set up inside of MCP, so those are all available for us to use now. I come in and say, show me all the issues in my Sentry environment.
By the way, Yogi's asking, so we just clone it and add it?
No. So we don't actually do for our MCP server. We're not doing any sort of crazy clone behavior. We are just having you connect to the URL. So we do this as a remote hosted one because we want it to be easier. We don't want you to have to clone it.
Okay. Yogi, can you clarify what are you asking about? Is there a link? What are you talking about? A link to download Sentry, set that up, or something else?
He's probably, because there are like some MCP servers that you do download locally. And so like he's probably asking, is there a link to go in and actually download it? You can run it locally if you want to. So like the GitHub repo, if we pop back into the browser here, you can go to github.com/getsentry/Sentry MCP. I'll make this bigger once we get into it. You can clone this down and run it locally in standard IO mode, so std.io or std.io mode. Okay. But we generally recommend that people run it on the remote. It's just better, and you get a lot more features, a lot more functionality out of it. But you can run it in standard IO mode down here pretty easily if you wanted to.
Got it. All right.
So in the background, it went out and it did a search for issues inside of my environment. And it starts churning through. It does the markdown output here, but ultimately summarizes it out down here. I come in and say, what was the most recent issue? And I'm being pretty verbose here, but like really what we've optimized around is what can I fix in my environment? And it'll actually go through and pull all of that down. I just want to be more specific here for our group. So this is the one that we were seeing inside of there just now. The problem we were looking into in our environment. I can come in and say, can we auto fix this? So it's going to look at the issue using Seir. It's going to pull that down, and it's going to actually start churning on that in the background. It's going to look to see if there's already a solution, which it does have one, and if it doesn't feel like that one is right, it's going to go and run a new one, and then it'll pull it down, and we can ask for status. And so instead of us going in and just dropping in, this is the error message into the LLM, we can have Sentry do all that context work I told you about and pull it in as part of the solution.
Nice.
It's like, if you think about like, we talked about like somebody learning to debug and the speed to actually go and debug a problem, like in probably 4 minutes, I was able to set up the MCP server. I was able to start pulling in those issues from my environment and start fixing it. It's like, if you know the connected story here of someone actually working on this in prod, you get an alert from Sentry that says, hey, this is broken. You're like, I have to go fix this. I have to push code to fix it. You jump on your laptop, you open up vscode, you pull down the repo, you go in and you ask the MCP, tell me about this error, this alert I just got. Something is broken in the environment. And it just pulls down the fix and you apply it and you're good to go. Or you have the automation set up to where the PR is already there waiting for you and you're good to go. And then alongside that, you could have the extension for Code Codecov set up in here. So I come in. So after you go and push it, you can go and make sure that whatever you change actually has good code coverage on it, and that's all available. And so really, like, again, workflow is something we care a lot about, and making sure that you have a good workflow for solving it. It's like all this stuff lives right alongside each other inside of that workflow.
Code Codecov, is that just like a plugin that's unrelated to you guys, or?
No, this is us. Code Codecov is definitely our product. And so code coverage is all about test coverage and making sure that as you go and test out your application, that you have good tests in place for the different interactions inside of the app, right? So like, do logins function and return the expected code? Does database inserts return the expected code? As you go and push out these fixes, does the fix that you actually instrumented actually fix things, or is it going to break in some conditions? And that's, you generally want good code coverage to handle that.
Cool. Producer, could you put up some of Yogi's last few comments? I think the last thing he said was gotcha. So that JSON file, and that's it. I'll check the docs. Sorry, my chatting comes halfway. Okay. Speaking of docs, where are your docs?
So our docs are in. We go to up here. I have the docs site, so docs.sentry.io. This is the MCP server docs, but if you pop in, all of our stuff's readily available. So you go docs.sentry.io and you can explore pretty well. We've got this nice little AI search up here that you can go in and you can ask questions to. So like, for example, how do I set up the Sentry MCP server? And it'll go in and start running its query and probably gives back an answer in a few here. Yeah, so those are the steps. You can go in instead of searching through. Again, very big on developer experience and making sure that people have a good flow. If you want to come and just ask it a question, you can do that, get the answer instead of parsing manually through a bunch of docs. We did the ever so popular change recently to where you can go in and you can pull down the markdown for docs as well. So if you want to feed that into an LLM, you can. One of my favorite things to do is I use logs a ton. So I'll go into logs and I'll grab the rules editor here. I'll copy this and I'll drop it into my app. Oh, so it went and actually used the Sentry fix. It grabbed the analysis back and applied it to fix the problem for that change. So we can go in and you can see some of the stuff that it did.
Okay.
So pulled all that in. So we're going to tell it to keep all these changes. Start another layer there. So I'm not sure about that one. But yeah, so it went through and actually applied some of the fixes based off of what it found, which is pretty cool. But I will come in a lot of times into LLMs and I'll say, I want to set up logging in this application. Use these parameters from Sentry, and I'll just paste it in. And the LLMs will actually do a surprisingly good job of taking that block of example text and saying, cool, I'm going to look through this application and find the right, like, good places to use these configurations to roll out. So
nice.
That's something we changed recently, or we added recently to the docs. It's pretty cool.
I can't wait for them to like update the UI so that like when you're actually making the MCP calls, the little spinning circle, I feel like it almost implies like there's a problem when it takes a while. I want
totally,
like a better.
Totally.
Huh?
I think that's because I was just agreeing with you. I think streaming responses in MCP is a relatively new thing. Before they generally like a lot of times polled or a lot of times ran off of against standard IO. As like streaming for MCP gets better, like you'll be able to get a lot more of these like live, what is it doing behind the scenes kind of things. So yeah, it's going through and it's setting up logging throughout the app now, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah, MCP really easy to get started with. We want people to go and explore and use it. We're seeing pretty crazy adoption of it. It's ended up being a pretty popular thing overall. I think it's number 5 most visited page on our doc site now.
So if people have feedback, what's like the best way that they could like get feedback and suggestions, or if they have like if they need like support?
Yeah, so we have a pretty active Discord community. So I would definitely say come join us, come hang out on Discord with us. We're all pretty active on social. So if you're on X, you can tag me at Cody De Arkland. If you tag the Sentry handle, we have a bunch of monitoring set up internally that tells a bunch of us when people are talking about it. So we jump into conversations quite a bit on there. I think you can always reach out to me too, Cody at Sentry.io. I love talking to users, love teaching people things. So if you're a Sentry user who's stuck on something, or if you want to use it and you're just not sure where to start, drop me an email. I love connecting with people in the community. I'm big community guy, so happy to jump in with whoever on that. So again, I'd say Discord, jump on social, post something, or feel free to reach out to me, and I'm always game.
Perfect. So we're heading towards like to wrapping up now. Is there any last thing that you wanted to show before we say our goodbyes and wrap up?
No, I think that's it. You know, I think it's kind of cool. We talked a little bit about MCP and like the VS Code extension. Like, I don't know. I think like the workflow of this stuff is super interesting. Love for everyone to jump in and just give it a try and let us know. But I think we covered a lot of ground in about 40 or 45 minutes.
Yeah. No, we sure did. And last questions, like if someone, like I'm always like a big fan of like tutorials. Do you guys have like anything like that on maybe like on YouTube, like getting started with Sentry, or it's pretty much straightforward with your docs and that's all that's needed anyway?
No, we have a ton of, my team puts out a ton of content on YouTube. So there's getting started for pretty much every part of it. There's some really cool content on there that we just recently did around the log stuff, around the AI monitoring. We do a lot of like a good job making the docs actionable, so you can usually explore those and dive in. Definitely check out things like we just rolled out AI PR reviews, which are pretty cool. Having Sentry be able to like review PR changes, like you can find the docs for getting started with those. That's pretty cool. We also run workshops every few weeks. We just ran one yesterday. We'll run another one in a couple of weeks that let people get like hands-on with the team. And so check those out. We call them Sentry builds. So you can find those on the website also. Yeah, there's a lot of avenues for how to get started.
Perfect. Well, this has been fun. I enjoyed
I hope you learned something. I hope everybody who joined learned something.
Yeah, I did. Last question. Producer, you could take off his screen if you want. Any discounts for students, or it's all equal?
No, so I mean we have a pretty generous free tier. So like check out the free tier. The free tier covers a lot of it, and we tend to send people through that a lot. We do offer up access for like open source, and so you can hit our website and there's some stuff on there like, so if you're going to open source a project, we can do it. And usually for students we can do some stuff also. So reach out to me. I'm happy to point people in the right direction. But we want people to be able to use this stuff and fix broken stuff easier.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Cody. This has been awesome. And yeah, next time you have like a new major announcements, hit us up again so we could see how things keep getting better and better. AI is insane. It's I love it.
It's fast moving time. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, folks, thanks for joining, and feel free to sign up with our YouTube channel, and we have like a TikTok account, and what else? We have like our TikTok, we have our YouTube, and also our Twitter. So again, glad you joined, and have a great rest of your day. See ya.